when a cadaver dog team found the body of beloved local schoolteacher Miranda Kinsley in the deep forest. The residents were rocked. Miranda had been absent for weeks. She was renowned for her compassion and commitment to her pupils. The community was shocked and in mourning over her unexpected absence. Called in to oversee the inquiry was seasoned investigator Detective Elias Kettering, known for cracking difficult cases. Finding Miranda's body marked only the start of a sinister story that would expose buried secrets and destroyed lives. The inquiry started with an exhaustive look over the crime scene. Under layers of fallen leaves and forest trash, the cadaver dogs had guided the team to a shallow grave, painstakingly concealed. Miranda had been strangled, forensic pathologists found, her life extinguished in a flash of terrible violence. Though the specifics of her death presented a bleak picture, it was the hints left behind that would enable the complex network of relationships to be unearthed, leading to her death. Friends, sorry to interrupt, but please help me reach 1,500 subscribers by the end of the summer. I will be very pleased. Let's keep going. Elias began by interviewing colleagues and friends of Miranda. He found out she had been in a turbulent relationship with local musician Jason Norwood. Known for his explosive temperament and fervent nature, Jason soon became of interest. But Elias dug further and found that Miranda's romantic life was far more complex than anyone had thought. Miranda had been engaged in a covert affair with local eminent psychiatrist Dr. Lyle Bennett. The two had crossed paths during one of Lyle's volunteer trips to the institution, where he offered troubled students counseling. Driven by an obvious chemistry and common intellectual interests, their relationship had developed rapidly. Lyle couldn't resist the appeal of Miranda's friendliness and charm, even though Cecilia Bennett, her married attorney, was quite respected. Although the affair had stayed under wraps for months, Miranda's hint about wanting a more public recognition of their relationship set off conflict. Fearing the fallout from a public scandal and the possible career ruin, Lyle had tried to distance himself from Miranda. This rejection, added to Jason's growing jealousy and mistrust, produced a volatile scenario. Elias pieced together the chronology of events leading to Miranda's disappearance and came upon a string of damning emails between her and Lyle. The emails exposed Lyle's mounting nervousness and Miranda's desperation. Miranda had confronted Lyle at his office on the evening she vanished, demanding he decide between her and his wife. Later on, witnesses said Miranda left the office in a depressed state, but Lyle insisted she left unharmed. Lyle's alibi notwithstanding, Elias felt the psychiatrist knew more than he was disclosing. The inquiry veered dramatically when forensic examination of Miranda's phone records turned up a string of threatening notes from an unidentified number. Angry and possessive, the messages suggested someone watching her every step. Elias's staff followed the number to a burner phone registered under a false name, but the trail stopped. Desperate for solutions, Elias looked to psychological profiling in search of the mental source of the threats. It was in this stage of the research that Jason Norwood unexpectedly produced a breakthrough. Under great pressure and investigation, Jason eventually admitted to a furious fight he had with Miranda on the evening she vanished. He said he followed her to Lyle's office and saw their conflict from a distance. Driven by jealousy and resentment, Jason confronted Miranda as she left, sparking a physical fight. Jason had strangled Miranda and hurriedly buried her body in the forest out of a flash of unbridled rage. Although the confession seemed to neatly close the case, Elias couldn't get rid of the sense that something was wrong. Jason's story was full of contradictions, and his emotional condition pointed to more psychological upheaval. Elias chose to investigate Jason's background more closely and found a troubled past and history of mental health problems. Now the research focused on deciphering the intricate dynamics among Miranda, Jason, and Lyle. Elias thought Miranda's murder went beyond a straightforward crime of passion. Deceit and manipulation were shown by a sequence of linked secrets he unearthed as he dug further into their life. The scene was ready for a dramatic disclosure, and Elias knew the truth was buried under layers of well-crafted falsehoods. The research was far from finished, and the town remained long and darkly shadowed by the shadow of love and treachery. Based on instincts, Elias Kettering realized that Jason Norwood's confession was not the whole truth, even if it was damning. The murder of Miranda Kinsley seemed to mark the end of more subdued, darker currents running through the life of those engaged. His ongoing sorting of data and testimony revealed a pattern of dishonesty and manipulation. Suspecting the psychiatrist might have been more involved in the events preceding Miranda's death, Elias chose to re-interview Dr. Lyle Bennett. Lyle seemed calm, but obviously worn out in their meeting. His once assured manner had given way to a resignation. Seeing the walls Lyle had erected around his secrets start to fall apart, Elias observed the change. "Lyle, I need you to be totally honest with me," Elias said. "Did you know about Jason's plans that evening?" Lyle hesitated, his eyes flitting away momentarily before meeting Elias's stare. "I was aware of his volatility. Miranda told me about his threats, but I never would have imagined he would act in this way." Elias leaned forward and pushed on. "You claimed to know he was unstable, but you did nothing to guard Miranda. Just why?" Deeply sighing, the psychiatrist ran a hand through his graying hair. "I shivered, fearful of losing everything. My family, my work. I reasoned that pulling away from Miranda would help to diffuse the situation." Elias kept challenging Lyle, and he found discrepancies in his chronology. Lyle's story of the evening Miranda vanished did not line phone records or witness testimony. Growing more dubious, Elias got a warrant to check Lyle's house and office. Elias's search turned up a concealed drawer in Lyle's office desk. Inside were letters and pictures clearly capturing his affair with Miranda. More shockingly, they came upon a series of notes from Jason that threatened Lyle, as well as Miranda. Trying to control the matter on his own terms, the psychiatrist had kept these threats under cover-up. The forensic team found more proof from Miranda's body in meantime. Under her fingernails, soil analysis turned up traces of a rare mineral only found in a particular section of the forest, implying she had been moved post-mortem. This revelation went against Jason's admission of a quick burial and suggested the presence of another person. Elias went back to Jason Norwood, this time seeing the events more clearly. Under the weight of fresh data, Jason broke down and admitted he had panicked and called Lyle for help following his confrontation with Miranda. The two had crossed the forest, Lyle persuading Jason to let him handle things. Seeking to delay its discovery and buy time to cover his tracks, Lyle had then relocated Miranda's body to a more isolated area. The disclosure gave the matter still another degree of difficulty. Elias now had to prove Lyle's active participation in the cover-up and potential orchestrament of Miranda's murder. He also had to investigate the degree of control and manipulation Lyle might have applied to Miranda and Jason. Financial records found by Elias's team revealed Lyle had been pouring money into a covert account, probably for use as leverage over Jason. Interviews with Lyle's colleagues also exposed his manipulative tendencies and past of controlling behavior, especially directed against weaker people. Elias started to see a horrific picture of Lyle Bennett as the evidence grew, a man who made use of his position and intelligence to influence people around him, made sure his secrets remained secret, and controlled other people's destinies. The affair with Miranda and his treatment of Jason presented him as a puppet master, stranding strings to keep his front. Elias knew he had to move quickly as the bits came together. Charging Lyle with obstruction of justice, auxiliary to murder, and psychological manipulation, he got a warrant for his arrest. The arrest stunned the society and exposed the darkness, hiding under the polished facade of the respected psychiatrist. Lyle's defense tried to present him as a man driven to desperate measures by a volatile circumstances throughout the trial. They maintained that although misguided, his actions were not illegal. Rather, they were those of someone trying to control a tragedy. Armed with overwhelming proof and expert testimony, the prosecution presented Lyle as a cold, calculated person who controlled everyone to serve his interests, though. The turning point of the trial arrived when Jason stood up, shattered and regretful. The jury was profoundly affected by his testimony on Lyle's control over him and the events of that fatal evening. Lyle had obviously planned most of what happened, playing Jason as a pawn in his game of lies. On every count, the jury declared Lyle Bennett guilty. Though the town would always bear scars from the tragedy, the decision gave it some closure. Left to grieve her loss, Miranda's family and friends struggled with the knowledge that someone they relied on had so profoundly betrayed them. The town battled to move ahead in the wake of it. The case acted as a sobering reminder of the hidden gloom that might lurk behind even the most revered front lines. For Detective Elias Kettering, it was another sobering reminder of the complexity of human nature and the extent people would go to guard their secrets. Once Lyle Bennett was found guilty, the community started to recover from the trial's shocks. Still unresolved, though, for Detective Elias Kettering, was the case. Especially on Jason Norwood, Lyle's psychological depth of control suggested deeper scars left on people caught in his web. For sake of closure and justice, Elias felt driven to make sure the whole truth had emerged. Given his mental health problems and degree of Lyle's influence over him, Jason Norwood, now a major player in the aftermath, was sentenced to a psychiatric hospital instead of jail. More about his relationship with Lyle surfaced during sessions with his therapist, Dr. Heather Moriarty. Long struggling with feelings of inadequacy, Jason had been molded into a tool for his own needs by Lyle using his weaknesses. Expert in forensic psychology, Dr. Moriarty understood Jason's degree of suffering. She asked Elias to investigate Lyle's past and relationships so that she might fully comprehend his manipulative actions. Elias agreed, understanding that revealing these layers could offer vital new perspectives on how to avoid such tragedies going forward. Re-examining past cases connected to Lyle, Elias and Dr. Moriarty found a startling trend. After working with him, several former patients and colleagues reported unexpected, radical changes in their life. A few had even passed away under unexplained circumstances. Others had suddenly moved away, and some had experienced mental breakdowns. This network of suffering suggested a long history of Lyle's manipulative impact. One especially terrifying case concerned a young woman called Sophie Williams, who had been a gifted artist prior to her entanglement with Lyle. Sophie had sought therapy for depression, but her mental health rapidly declined under Lyle's care. She appeared to be dead in her apartment, a suicide. But the specifics now seemed shockingly similar to Miranda's situation, suggesting possible foul play. Reopening Sophie's case, Elias was motivated by a fresh will. He followed her family and friends to compile evidence on her last days. Eliza, Sophie's sister, said that Sophie had grown more isolated and paranoid, convinced someone was controlling her life. Eliza had always suspected Lyle was involved, but she lacked the proof. Elias and Dr. Moriarty worked together using this fresh lead to create a psychological profile of Lyle Bennett by piecing together his approaches and motives. They came to the conclusion that Lyle used his knowledge to control and finally destroy those he judged weak or threatening to his facade, so acquiring a sense of power from manipulating others. Lyle had kept careful notes of his contacts with patients, colleagues, and victims. Thus, Elias also found something that chilled his spine. Hidden in a storage facility under a false name, these documents revealed his techniques for manipulation and offered evidence of his participation in several deaths and psychological crises. The terrifying notebooks exposed Lyle's actual nature, a predator who lived on dominance and control. When Elias and Dr. Moriarty presented this fresh data to the court, Lyle's sentence was extended and more charges were leveled against him. This set off a sequence of hearings. The disclosures also caused the medical board to permanently revoke his license, so guaranteeing he could never resume practicing psychiatry. Now struggling with the whole scope of Lyle Bennett's crimes, the town looked for means of healing and forward movement. To help neighbors heal the trauma and rebuild trust, community leaders set up mental health projects and support groups. Honoring Miranda's legacy and commitment to education, her family set up a scholarship in her name. Jason Norwood had a long and difficult road to recovery. Dr. Moriarty helped him to sort out the layers of abuse and manipulation he had experienced. Therapy sessions enabled him to recover his sense of self, apart from the control Lyle had imposed upon him. Understanding his victimization, the town provided support and understanding to enable Jason to re-enter society. Knowing he had discovered the whole truth and given those who suffered justice, Detective Elias Kettering felt closure in the case. The study had tried his will and revealed the sinister complexity of human nature, but it also strengthened his will to pursue justice, regardless of how far buried the truth might be. Elias considered the lessons the case taught as the town gradually went back to normal. Though they had left a lasting impression, the shadows of love and treachery had also brought the community closer and encouraged fresh awareness of personal responsibility. The catastrophe had exposed the inner darkness, but it also highlighted the fortitude and will of the human spirit. Months following the conviction and disclosures about Lyle Bennett, the town started to show some normal peace. Still, the terrible events stayed in the hearts and brains of the people. Detective Elias Kettering would find himself returning to the sites that had become important during the inquiry. The peaceful park where Miranda Kinsley used to spend time with her pupils, the deep forest where she was discovered, and the quiet streets that now heard whispers of the past. Held in the neighborhood church, Miranda's memorial service attracted a gathering that spilled out onto the courtyard from the pews. Even still in mourning, her family expressed thanks for the community's outpouring of support. The scholarship fund, set in her name, had already started to support young students in following their aspirations, so ensuring that Miranda's legacy of compassion and knowledge would inspire going forward. Now, living in a mental health rehab center, Jason Norwood had made great progress toward recovery. Dr. Heather Moriarty noted Jason's growing capacity to manage his trauma and reconstruct his life, so attesting to consistent improvement. With the help of the community, Jason started to rediscover his love of painting and used it as a therapeutic release to share his road toward recovery. Living a life that reflected the love and imagination Miranda had embodied would help him to honor her memory. Often approached by town residents appreciating Elias's unrelenting search of the truth, he had come to represent resilience and justice inside the community. Though he received compliments, Elias stayed modest, since he knew the case had been a team effort involving committed experts and a helping community. His encounters had sharpened his sensitivity and awareness of human frailty, so transforming him from a mere investigator into a defender of the welfare of his community. Elias came upon Cecilia Bennett one evening, strolling across the town plaza. After her husband was convicted, the once famous lawyer had withdrew from public life. She appeared tired, but under control, a monument to the will she had to deal with Lyle's actions. "Detective Kettering," she said, giving him a weak smile, "I wanted to say thank you." For all. Knowing the weight of her words, Elias nodded. "Mrs. Bennett, I simply performed my duties. I apologize for what you went through." Cecilia sighed, her eyes flickering with both grief and determination. "Don't we all have battles? Knowing the truth, however, has given me the will to keep on, despite any suffering. By then, hopefully, we will all be at some peace." Elias sensed great closure as she turned away. The case involved exposing the secret wounds and letting them heal, not only about finding a crime. Though devastated, the town had shown amazing resiliency and unity capacity. The community kept rebuilding in the next months, getting closer and encouraging a vigilant atmosphere. Miranda Kinsley's memory stayed a lighthouse, reminding everyone of the need of integrity and compassion. Though sad, her narrative inspired a group dedication to help and elevate each other. The trip had confirmed for Elias his direction. Knowing that his responsibilities went beyond crime solving, they were about preserving the fabric of his community. He returned to work with fresh energy. Though they would never be forgotten, the shadows of the past had been faced and now woven with threads of resiliency, truth, and hope into the fabric of the town. The town welcomed the future with wary hope as the seasons changed and brought fresh starts. The knowledge gained from the tragedies of love, treachery, and murder had left a lasting impression and shaped a society that would always aim to be vigilant, fair, and sympathetic. And right in the middle of this town, Detective Elias Kettering was always alert, making sure the shadow of the past would not follow the future.